The scent of champagne, perfume, and ambition filled the grand ballroom. Lights glimmered off the sequined gowns of socialites, critics, and investors, and for a moment, I felt the familiar thrill of being the center of it all. Isabelle Laurent, the shining face of the Laurent fashion house. My latest collection hung behind me like a row of living canvases, and yet, a shadow coiled in my chest, refusing to be ignored. 6 months. 6 months before the accident that would take everything from me. 6 months before Marc would try to kill me. And now I had a second chance. I glanced at the crowd, studying my husband. Marc Laurent was laughing, charming the investors, completely unaware that I had already intercepted the files that would undo him. The documents rested in my clutch, weighty with the power to destroy the man who had once plotted my death. He was talking to my cousin, the younger one he had been eyeing for months, and I felt a surge of fury that burned hotter than any runway spotlight. I had trusted him once. I had loved him once. And he had tried to burn me alive. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Sebastian Wolfe wants to meet tonight. The Vulture of Wall Street. Ruthless, brilliant, and feared by every CEO from Paris to New York. I had his attention because of Marc's shady dealings, and I intended to use him to my advantage. I stepped toward the balcony to make the call. The crowd's chatter became distant as I focused on the plan I had been crafting in secret. Isabelle. Marc's voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to see him smiling, smooth, confident, oblivious to my awareness. Enjoying the party? I'm enjoying seeing how much you've underestimated me, I said lightly. His brow arched. Underestimate? My love, I own every aspect of this house. You're the face, but I am the mind behind it all. I laughed softly, the sound sharp and icy. You think the mind counts for more than the soul, Marc? Watch closely. I dialed the number and stepped out onto the balcony, phone pressed to my ear. Sebastian Wolfe, I said, my voice calm but firm. I have something you might find interesting. He chuckled. I thought I might hear from you tonight. Tell me. I smiled, fingers tightening around the clutch. Marc has been embezzling from Laurent for months. Offshore accounts, falsified invoices, hidden contracts. I have the proof. And I'm tired of letting him get away with it. There was silence on the other end. Then, meet me. Tonight. The Louvre steps. Midnight. I hung up, a thrill of satisfaction rushing through me. The night was mine. Marc approached again, oblivious to the game I was about to play. Isabelle, are you all right? You look distant. I tilted my head, smiling sweetly. I'm perfectly fine. Just thinking about how to make this collection unforgettable. He nodded, satisfied with my answer, and returned to his cousin. My lips curled into a smile he would never see coming. The runway loomed ahead, a river of light and fabric, every gaze fixed on me. But tonight, I would not be a model. Tonight, I would be the woman who ended Marc Laurent's reign over the fashion house he had tried to steal from me. I adjusted my clutch under the folds of my gown and whispered to myself, 6 months early. I'm alive. And this time I win. With one last glance at the oblivious man who had tried to kill me, I walked into the crowd, heart pounding, already planning the final act, the act that would leave Marc with nothing and me with everything, including the man who might just become more than an ally. The night air on the Louvre steps was crisp, carrying the scent of stone and history. I adjusted the folds of my gown, clutching the folder of Marc's embezzlement files like a talisman. The city lights reflected off the glass pyramid, casting triangles of brilliance across the courtyard. And then I saw him, Sebastian Wolfe, the Vulture of Wall Street. A man whose reputation could crush empires and whose charm was rumored to be as lethal as his business acumen. He stood perfectly composed, dark coat buttoned, hands in pockets, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. Isabelle Laurent, he said, his voice smooth as silk over steel. I thought I might find you here. You did, I replied, keeping my tone casual. And I have something you might want to see. He took a step closer, curious, though his expression betrayed nothing. Do tell. I handed him the folder. His fingers brushed mine, faintly, and I felt a spark that had nothing to do with the files. He opened it carefully, scanning the documents with lightning speed, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Well," he murmured after a moment, "this is impressive." "Impressive," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "It's criminal. And it belongs in your hands, not his." Sebastian's lips twitched. "You're not exaggerating. This could ruin him." I leaned slightly closer, letting the night air carry my words just for him. "Exactly my point, and I was hoping you'd help me make sure it does." He looked at me for a long moment, assessing, calculating. "And why would a woman of your finesse want to ally with a man like me?" His voice was teasing, but his gaze was sharp, probing deeper than any socialite had dared. "Because I don't trust anyone who doesn't know how to take what they want," I said, letting a faint smirk curve my lips. "And you, Mr. Wolfe, have a reputation for taking." His chuckle was low and approving. "I like women who speak like that. Rare breed. Dangerous, smart, and charming." I felt a thrill at his words. He hadn't touched me, hadn't crossed the line, yet somehow he had disarmed me. "Charming," I echoed lightly. "I suppose that depends on who you're talking to." Sebastian's eyes darkened, lingering on mine. "I'm talking to the only woman who could walk into her own launch party and already be planning her husband's downfall. That's charm in my book." I bit the inside of my cheek to hide my grin. "Then I suppose we're allies." "Not just allies," he said quietly, stepping closer so that the shadows of the Louvre played across his features. "Partners. And partners can be rewarded." The air between us tightened, the electricity unmistakable. I had always known Sebastian Wolfe as a ruthless businessman, a predator in the financial jungle, but standing here with him, I realized he could be far more dangerous in ways I might not survive, yet didn't want to resist. "Then let's make sure we both get what we want," I said, extending my hand. He took it, firm, deliberate, and for a fleeting moment, our eyes locked, a silent acknowledgement that whatever this alliance was, it had shifted into something more. Something personal. "And Isabelle," he added, his voice dropping an octave, intimate and teasing. "If we succeed." I tilted my head, curious. "If we succeed?" He smirked. "Then I'll be expecting a proper thank you, in a very special way." I felt heat rush to my cheeks. "I think we'll see about that, Mr. Wolfe." The night was ours, the files were ours, and the game had just begun. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt the intoxicating mix of power, revenge, and a dangerous attraction that could either ruin me or make me unstoppable. And deep down, I knew, with Sebastian Wolfe, I was ready for both. The Laurent fashion house hummed with energy the next morning, a storm beneath the surface of silk and sequins. My assistant flitted between designers, models, and investors, all unaware that I held the key to their downfall. Marc was already in his office, radiating the smug confidence of a man who believed he had conquered everything, including me. I smiled sweetly as I walked past the marble lobby, the folder of embezzlement files tucked discreetly under my arm. My phone buzzed with a text from Sebastian. "Ready when you are. Midnight. Louvre steps." I tapped back a single word. "Soon." But first, Marc had to see the illusion of control crumble. I entered his office, my heels clicking sharply against the polished floors. "Marc," I said softly, almost innocently, "do you have a moment?" He looked up, eyebrows raised. "Of course, my dear. You seem eager today." "Eager to help," I said, letting a demure smile curve my lips. "I thought you might want to see the new investor report I compiled." Marc waved a hand dismissively. "I have everything under control, Isabelle. Why worry?" I leaned over his desk just slightly, enough for him to catch the subtle glint in my eyes. "Because control can slip through your fingers faster than you realize," I murmured. He laughed lightly, oblivious. "Oh, Isabelle, you always have such flair for drama." Little did he know, the drama had already begun. Later that night, in the quiet of my apartment, Sebastian arrived. The Louvre steps glimmered faintly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked impossibly sharp in a tailored black suit, eyes gleaming with that cold intelligence I'd come to trust and secretly crave. "You've got him?" he asked, voice low, dangerous, magnetic. I handed him the USB drive, feeling the electricity of proximity as his fingers brushed mine. The spark was small but undeniable, like static before a storm. "I trust you'll handle it?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. His smirk was slow, predatory. "I trust you. And I trust this will end exactly as you hope." We worked side by side in silence, the tension between us thickening with each click of the computer keys. Sebastian leaned closer, inspecting the files on the laptop screen, and I felt my breath hitch as his arm brushed mine. "You know," he murmured, not looking at me, "there's something intoxicating about a woman who takes control like this." I bit back a laugh. "You make it sound like a flirtation." "Maybe I intend it to be," he said softly, glancing at me from the corner of his eye. "Power is better when shared and when desired." My pulse quickened. "Be careful," I said, pretending to adjust the laptop. "You might get both and regret it." His lips quirked into a teasing smile. "I never regret challenges, Isabelle. Especially the dangerous kind." By midnight, the leak was executed. Marc's embezzlement files flowed directly to Sebastian, every piece of evidence ready to dismantle his empire. The fashion world would be shaken to its core, and Marc would have no idea what hit him. As we stepped back onto the Louvre steps, the city lights sparkling around us, I dared to let myself notice the warmth of Sebastian's hand brushing mine as we walked. "Tonight," he said, low and intimate, "we take back everything they tried to steal. And after," his gaze lingered on mine, "we decide what else we might take." I swallowed hard, heart racing. "Then let's make sure tonight counts." And in that moment, I realized revenge had never been this thrilling or this dangerously, deliciously personal. The lights of the Laurent fashion house shimmered like stars caught in crystal chandeliers, but I felt no awe tonight. The crowd, editors, investors, socialites, expected a flawless show, yet none suspected the storm waiting behind the sequined gowns. Marc had no idea I had already handed over his embezzlement files to Sebastian Wolfe. I adjusted the silk of my final ensemble, a gown of midnight blue that clung to my curves and gleamed under the stage lights. My reflection stared back at me, a calm mask over the wildfire raging inside. Tonight, I was no longer the naive face of Laurent. Tonight, I was the woman reclaiming everything. Backstage, Sebastian appeared, leaning against the doorway, sharp suit perfectly tailored, eyes dark with a quiet intensity. "Are you ready for him to see everything he's lost?" he asked, voice low, a smirk teasing the edge of his lips. I let a small smile curve mine. "I've never been more ready." "And you?" "I've never wanted to witness a woman in control more," he said, stepping closer. His hand brushed mine as he passed. Electricity surged. "You're incredible, Isabelle." I tilted my head, a teasing glint in my eye. "And dangerous, I hope. That's a combination you can't resist." He chuckled, dark and low. "I never resist a challenge." The crowd hushed as the models began their parade down the runway. Sequins, silk, leather, all shimmered under the lights. But the final act was mine. I stepped forward, heels clicking like a judge's gavel. The music shifted subtly, the spotlight following me. Every eye in the room turned toward the woman they thought they knew. Marc stood near the front row, smug and oblivious, the younger cousin perched beside him like a spoiled trophy. His eyes widened as he realized the gaze of the entire fashion world was on me, not the clothes, not the show, on me. I walked slowly, deliberately, letting the air of confidence wrap around me. I held the small envelope of my final move in my clutch, the papers that legally sold the company to Sebastian. He stood at the edge of the stage, waiting, watching, the shadow of a smirk tugging at his lips. I reached the end of the runway, turned, and let the announcement escape my lips. "Laurent Fashion House has officially changed ownership," I said, voice steady, carrying over the stunned silence. "Marc Laurent no longer has any claim." The gasp that rippled through the room was delicious. Marc's face drained of color. The cousin stammered, her eyes wide with shock. Sebastian stepped forward, taking my hand in his, firm and possessive. And as the new owner, he said, his voice smooth and commanding, I look forward to building the future together with you. I felt the heat of his gaze, the electricity pulsing through our joined hands. My lips curved in a victorious smile. I think we'll make quite the team, I said softly, letting the flirtation linger, teasing, dangerous. Marc stumbled backward, words failing him. Security murmured quietly, the whispers spreading. The empire he built on lies and deceit was gone. Sebastian leaned close, his breath brushing my ear. You are spectacular, he murmured. Ruthless, brilliant, and utterly irresistible. I laughed softly, heart pounding. Flattery, Mr. Wolfe? Or a warning? He smirked. Perhaps both. But I'll take the warning if it comes with a kiss. Before I could answer, he captured my lips in a deliberate, commanding kiss, the kind that spoke of power, desire, and partnership all at once. The world narrowed to that moment. The rush of triumph, the electricity between us, and the knowledge that this was only the beginning. When we finally parted, the crowd erupted in applause, unaware that they had witnessed more than a fashion show. They had watched a woman reclaim her life, her company, and the man who would never let her go. Marc's empire lay in ruins. Sebastian held my hand, and I realized, with a thrill I hadn't felt in years, that I was finally free and dangerously, deliciously alive. The morning after the runway show, the Laurent offices were a whirlwind. Marc's absence was already causing chaos. Staff whispered in corners, investors called frantically, and the press had begun circulating headlines that would make any socialite blush. But I, Isabelle Laurent, moved through it all like a queen surveying her reclaimed kingdom. Sebastian Wolfe arrived just as I was reviewing the latest reports on Marc's collapsed accounts. He entered quietly, dark coat hanging perfectly, eyes sharp and calculating, but there was that subtle warmth for me I'd come to crave. You've handled last night beautifully, he said, voice low, almost intimate. I don't think I've ever seen someone combine ruthlessness with elegance like that. I allowed a small smirk. You haven't worked with enough women in fashion, Mr. Wolfe. He chuckled, leaning against the edge of my desk. Or perhaps I've just never worked with the right one. I felt the spark again, that undeniable pulse between us, and had to remind myself to breathe. Flattery will get you everywhere, I said, glancing up from the spreadsheets. But what about strategy? Strategy, he murmured, stepping closer, requires partners who understand risk and reward. And I think you and I understand each other far too well. His hand brushed mine casually as he leaned over the desk, but the contact was enough to make my pulse stutter. I looked up, and he held my gaze, his dark eyes flickering with amusement and something more, something I wasn't sure I wanted to resist. We need to ensure Marc doesn't claw back any power, I said, refocusing on the task at hand. The board needs to be fully on our side, and I need him contained before he can recover from this embarrassment. Agreed, Sebastian said, stepping back reluctantly. But first you need to understand your leverage isn't just in documents. It's in presence, confidence, the knowledge that you can win and take it all, and do it with style. I laughed softly. You make it sound so enticing. Because it is, he said, letting his voice drop, closer, softer. And I find it incredibly attractive. I caught my breath, trying to ignore the heat creeping up my neck. Mr. Wolfe, I said, letting the title sound teasing, you do realize that mixing business with temptation is extremely dangerous. His smirk deepened. Danger is my specialty, Isabelle. And I've never been afraid of it. For a moment, the air between us crackled, charged, dangerous, and electric. His gaze lingered on me, not as a partner in business, but as something far more intimate. My fingers brushed the edge of the table, hesitant, almost wanting the contact to extend to him. Then let's plan, I said, regaining control, the fire in my chest returning. We need to finalize the acquisition, secure the board, and ensure Marc's empire is fully dismantled. He nodded, hands resting briefly on my shoulders, guiding me toward the window to discuss the city skyline. Plans, power, and patience, he murmured, his voice soft against my ear. But I have a feeling the best part of tonight won't be the board meeting. I tilted my head, intrigued. Oh. He lowered his lips just a fraction, close enough for me to feel the warmth, teasing yet deliberate. No. The best part will be when I get to celebrate with you. Properly. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized what he meant. Not just the victory over Marc, but the dangerous, delicious tension between us that had grown from flirtation into something far more irresistible. Then I suppose I'll have to make sure you deserve it, I whispered, a playful spark in my eyes. His lips quirked. Oh, I always do if you let me. And as the sun set over Paris, I felt the intoxicating thrill of power, revenge, and desire intertwining. Marc Laurent had lost everything. I had regained everything. And Sebastian Wolfe, ruthless, magnetic, and dangerously charming, was now mine to navigate, both in business and in pleasure. The Laurent penthouse felt suffocating tonight, thick with Marc's arrogance and the illusion that he still held power. I stepped into the lobby with Sebastian by my side, every eye turning toward the couple whose presence radiated authority and danger. I had never felt more alive. Every step echoed the rhythm of my revenge, deliberate, controlled, unstoppable. Marc rose from the plush sofa, a grin plastered across his face that failed to hide the tension beneath. Isabelle, he said, voice smooth but strained. What an unexpected surprise. I allowed a faint smile to play on my lips. Marc, I said softly, deliberately casual. You look well. I hope you're comfortable in your new reality. He blinked, confused. Reality. Sebastian stepped closer, calm and commanding, his presence making Marc shrink imperceptibly. Your empire is officially under new management, he said, voice low and precise. Laurent Fashion House has been sold, legally, irreversibly, and entirely out of your control. Marc's face went pale. His hand clenched the armrest, knuckles white. That's impossible, he stammered. You can't. I laughed softly, the sound like crystal breaking. Oh, Marc. You underestimated me from the start. You thought I was naive, fragile, disposable. And now, I let the pause hang, letting the weight of every betrayal press down. You have nothing. He opened his mouth again, trying to argue, to reclaim some fragment of dominance, but Sebastian's sharp gaze cut through him. Every document, every asset, every shareholder vote gone. And Isabelle, Sebastian added, his hand brushing mine subtly, electric, teasing. She planned every detail. Marc's hands shook slightly. This is not over, he hissed. I stepped closer, close enough for him to see the fire in my eyes. It's over, Marc. And unlike last time, there's no second chance for you. You lost everything because you chose greed over love, ambition over loyalty. Marc swallowed hard, the weight of realization settling across his features. The man who had once tried to kill me now faced the truth. He was powerless. Sebastian moved, offering me his arm. Shall we? He said, voice teasing, eyes glinting. The faint brush of his hand against mine sent a thrill through me. I smiled, letting him lead me past Marc. We shall, I said, voice soft, sultry, confident. And tonight we celebrate. Outside, the city lights glittered across Paris, reflecting off the river. I could feel Sebastian's gaze on me, protective, possessive, and yet charged with something deeper. My heart raced as we walked together, away from Marc, away from the past, toward a future that was ours alone. He leaned slightly closer, the warmth of his body brushing mine. You are magnificent, he murmured, lips just grazing my ear. Ruthless, brilliant, and utterly irresistible. I felt a flush rise to my cheeks. Flattery again, Mr. Wolfe? I whispered, teasing, letting the tension linger. He smirked, dark and deliberate. Perhaps. Or a warning, he said softly, his lips brushing mine in a feather-light kiss, teasing, electric. Either way, I intend to enjoy every moment of this victory, and you. I melted slightly into the warmth of him, my fingers brushing his sleeve, feeling the thrill of desire and triumph intertwined. Then I hope you're prepared, I whispered, voice low, dangerous, and flirty. His laugh was a soft rumble against the night. I've never been more prepared or impatient. And as the lights of Paris shimmered around us, I realized the truth. I had reclaimed my life, my company, my power, and I had Sebastian Wolfe, ruthless and captivating, by my side. Together, we were unstoppable, in business, in revenge, and, perhaps most deliciously, in the dangerous game of desire. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of my newly secured Laurent office, casting golden light over the sleek lines of the furniture and the faint scent of fresh paper and silk. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of Marc's deceit pressing down on me. He had been stripped of everything, his shares, his influence, even his smug pride, and I had orchestrated it all. Sebastian stood beside me, hands tucked into his pockets, surveying the skyline. The city looked serene, oblivious to the storm we had just unleashed. He turned to me, eyes glinting with that same dark charm that always made my pulse skip. "You did it," he said softly, voice low, almost intimate. "Every detail, every move. You've won completely." I let a satisfied smile curl on my lips. "We've won, Sebastian. You and I." He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat radiating from him, a magnetic pull I could no longer resist. "We?" he asked, teasing. "I only facilitated the brilliance that was already yours." I laughed, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Flattery again? Dangerous, Mr. Wolfe." "Danger is my specialty," he murmured, moving closer, the city light glinting off the edges of his sharp jawline. "And I must admit, I find your brilliance, ruthlessness, and confidence intoxicating." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Intoxicating? That's bold," I whispered, letting the teasing linger. He smirked, dark and deliberate. "Bold things require bold women." His hand brushed mine, not just in passing, but in a deliberate, intimate gesture. The spark between us ignited, undeniable and thrilling. I tilted my head, letting my lips curve in a smile. "And what do bold men deserve?" "A kiss," he replied simply, stepping closer until our foreheads nearly touched. "And, perhaps, a lifetime of partnership." The heat of his words, the weight of his gaze, made my heart race. "Careful, Mr. Wolfe," I said, voice low, flirty. "You're dangerously close to getting both." He laughed softly, leaning in, lips brushing mine in a kiss that was firm, teasing, and full of promise. My fingers curled around his jacket, tugging him slightly closer. Electricity coursed through me, part desire, part triumph, part the intoxicating thrill of finally being free. We parted for just a breath, foreheads touching, hearts racing. "Isabelle," he murmured, "you've not only reclaimed your empire, you've claimed my attention. Completely." I grinned, letting a playful spark enter my voice. "Then I suppose you'll have to keep up with me, won't you?" His eyes darkened with delight. "Oh, I intend to. In business, in life, and perhaps in every kiss thereafter." I felt the weight of years of betrayal, manipulation, and danger lift from my shoulders. Marc was nothing more than a memory, a warning to anyone who underestimated me. But Sebastian was the future. Ruthless, brilliant, captivating, and entirely mine to navigate, both in the boardroom and in the heart. We stepped back to look over the city together, his arm brushing mine naturally. The warmth of it was intoxicating. I realized, in that moment, that the thrill of victory paled only slightly next to the thrill of being desired, respected, and dangerously close to love. Leaning into him, I whispered softly, "Then let's make sure every day from now is just as exhilarating." He chuckled, kissing my temple gently. "Every day, Isabelle. I promise you, every day." And as the sun bathed Paris in gold, I knew, with a thrill that coursed through every vein, that I had it all: power, revenge, freedom, and Sebastian Wolfe at my side, holding both my hand and my heart. The Louvre steps glimmered under the Parisian night sky, each light reflecting off the glass pyramid like stars fallen to earth. Tonight wasn't just any night. It was the culmination of months of planning, revenge, and delicate maneuvering. Marc Laurent's empire had crumbled. The fashion world had witnessed my triumph. And Sebastian Wolfe. Sebastian was standing beside me, dark, magnetic, and impossibly close. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low and teasing, brushing against my ear. I let a slow smile curve my lips. "I've never been more ready. Let's end this properly." He took my hand, his grip firm and possessive. The thrill of electricity surged between us with every step toward the gathered crowd. Journalists, investors, and socialites murmured among themselves, curious about the couple who commanded attention without saying a word. At the very center of the crowd, Marc stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. His arrogance had crumbled, replaced by fear and impotent rage. "Isabelle," he began, voice trembling, "this isn't fair." I turned, letting the lights of the Louvre illuminate my face, my victory, my freedom. "Fair," I echoed, voice clear, carrying across the steps. "Marc, life isn't about fairness. It's about consequences. And tonight, you're witnessing yours." Sebastian's hand brushed mine, sending a thrill up my spine. He leaned close, his lips near my ear. "I think she deserves more than just her victory," he murmured. I arched an eyebrow, intrigued.
"Oh."
"Yes," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The crowd gasped softly. "She deserves recognition, admiration, and perhaps a lifetime of partnership." Time slowed. I felt my heart hammering, the anticipation coiling inside me like a living thing. Sebastian knelt before me, box open, revealing a diamond ring that sparkled under the Louvre lights. "Isabelle Laurent," he said, voice steady, warm, commanding. "From the moment I met you, I admired your brilliance, your courage, and your power. But now I want more than admiration. I want you. I want us. Will you marry me?" The world held its breath. I could feel the weight of history, of revenge, of triumph, and of desire all crashing together in this single, breathtaking moment. My lips curved into a smile that was both victorious and tender. "Sebastian Wolfe," I said, voice low, intimate, teasing, "you've been dangerously close to my heart since the moment we met. But I think you've earned it." I bent down, letting the city lights catch the sparkle in my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I will." He rose, and we kissed, a kiss that was at once passionate and triumphant, teasing yet tender, filled with the promise of a future built together. The crowd erupted in applause, but I was aware of nothing but the warmth of his arms around me, the steady strength of his hands, and the thrill of finally being free and loved. When we finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "We did it," he murmured, voice husky with emotion. "Yes," I said, laughing softly.
"We did."
"And Marc, well, he's not worth another thought." Sebastian kissed me again, softer this time, a promise of all the days to come. The Louvre glimmered behind us, but nothing shone brighter than the thrill, the power, and the love that now pulsed between us. For the first time in my life, Isabelle Laurent, survivor, genius, and queen of her own destiny, was truly, irreversibly happy. And as the Parisian night embraced us, Sebastian whispered one last thing before our lips met again, sealing the moment. "You're mine, Isabelle, and I'll never let go."